but she had many collaborative projects in Scandinavia and across the Baltic, and with Poland as well. So I put this as, you know, the things which I've never done collaborative cross-national projects myself. I did research in other countries, and I worked for Gallup in London, right? So they did cross-national surveys for and other qualitative projects for the European Commission and other public clients and lots of private clients. But that was not running a team of researchers, academic researchers. So I decided I would learn bits from Barbara, right, and from her team. So that was I was inputting in this proposal of mine. Yeah, and then you have to also consider things like the communication of your research results. And of course you write, as always, that you would like to produce papers, and mind that these papers have to be open access, right? You will not be able to complete your application if you do not tick the box that it's open access. So in a sense, the EU helps you not to forget about this, what the EU is now very much concerned about.
Can you explain this again? I didn't understand.
Open access?
What do you mean you have to keep your paper in open access?
Yeah. When your paper is accepted for publication in a journal, right? Say in a top journal, like in our field would be memory studies. There is always an option to choose which is costly, which costs money, to have your article available to everyone, which is open access. Yeah? And you have to pay to Sage, who's the publishers, right? And I don't remember exactly the cost of this. It's a couple of hundreds of pounds. So it's you know, for a private individual, for us, you know, even for a university professor, particularly for a PhD candidate, that's a lot of money. But the EU would want you to put this into the budget of your proposal, right? And that's actually this is the training costs, right? So the training costs can be used for this. You don't have to pay out of your own pocket, out of your living.
I didn't understand before.
Yeah, okay. So that's a very important thing. There are a couple of very important things. One of them is the gender balance. See, when I was preparing this talk, I realized what was the gender balance in my case, because I thought there wasn't any. You see, the gender balance is a very tricky thing. In academia, it's becoming academia is becoming increasingly female. Right? Look at this room. It's very genderly unbalanced. In the EU Newspeak, and I'm deliberately using Orwell's vocabulary term, gender balance is women's equality. Yeah? Marie Curie was a woman, and she was the sole woman at the Sorbonne in this field when she was a student, right? The only woman. Now, in most universities these days, women are at the top. There are more women than men. Among the doctoral students, among the assistant professors. When it comes to associate professors, might be a balance, and when it comes to full professors, there would be more men. So I figured out what was the gender balance in my case. I am male, but I chose to go to a woman. Yeah. Might be a joke, but at least there was a gender balance issue. There is a whole page on the gender balance in the guidelines for you to read before you start applying. All right, so when it comes to communication, it's not only the papers, ideally, or I understand now, solely open access papers. It is also the contribution to the so-called European Innovation Union. You have to prove that your paper would contribute to the innovation within the EU. Right? And that's also addressed in the application guidelines. They will almost tell you what you should write. And then there is another thing which is very important, is public engagement. We are not meant to spend all our time in an ivory tower studying some very abstract issues and writing for publication in open access. We are also meant to go to the publics, various publics, to speak about our research. One of the things which I put into my application was that I was going to talk about the results of my work to various audiences, starting from teachers, Holocaust education, like slavery education. It's very important. In Poland it is highly important. There are lots of teacher trainings, and I have been invited to speak on my Auschwitz research. So I decided I would offer to speak about the Europeanization of Holocaust memory. There are group leaders who come regularly from Yad Vashem to the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum. And I've been invited to speak to these groups for many years. So I said I would speak about this to these groups. I said I would even go, I would offer myself to speak to my daughter's school. Right? I have got a daughter. I was going to bring my family to Sweden, which I did. And my daughter was going to attend the school there. These things had to be put into the application, because one of the things I had to write is, do you have family? If yes, what are you going to do with your family? Are they coming with you? Are there any facilities for your family? If you have kids in the city we will be living in, I had to check whether there is a proper school. It was an international school, so I decided I would offer myself to the school to speak about these subjects. The Holocaust has been a public interest topic in Sweden, right? And there is a governmental agency which organizes talks throughout the country. So I offered myself to them eventually, and I put this into the application. So you have to mind the public aspect of your research, the various audiences which you may address. Perhaps there are already such which you have addressed, which was my case. Or there might be some new ones, right? So it's decent to put this. Yeah, okay. Now, when it comes to the actual application process, that's another thing which I like about the Marie Curie grants. They are very easy to write the applications for. Yeah? You might think that I'm joking. I am not. I'm being very serious now. The average impression about the EU is it's tons of bureaucracy. You have to go through tons of papers before you start even thinking of something, and then you have to write tons of papers in your application. It's not true. It's a very user-friendly applicant's guide. Yeah, I got it on my device, so I will show it to you later. And then there is at the end of it, the last appendix is a template. People usually don't read appendices, right? Useless. But in this case, the last one is the most useful. That's the Microsoft Word template of an application. You just type your data, and it's organized in such a way that you cannot miss a single point. If you do it properly, if you address all the items which they want you to address, because they are listed there, bulleted there, then they would not refuse your decline your application on formal grounds. Sorry, right? And if you address them thoughtfully, then you would write a decent application. Now, this takes time, so you have to take time in order to write this application. In my case, it took me some time of getting ideas when I was traveling to conferences and sitting in the back rows of conferences and trying to put things together myself for my grant application. But then when I started working on it, it was 8 weeks of continual work. Even sometimes on Sundays I had to work. And in the last week I worked more than 18 hours a day. So it was pretty hard work. that was during the summer. I had the privilege of having long summer holidays. I stopped, I served as a director of my institute, and that was the year when I decided not to run for another term, which my colleagues didn't like too much, but they said, sorry, guys. And I decided to go to this resort in the Highlands with my family, and my family were very caring. You know, they left me alone if I wanted, but they also cared for me, you know, to take me for a walk if I needed. Yeah, and 8 weeks of continual work. That's, yeah. You see, I work very slowly. I need lots of time to work. Some of you might be faster. And I'm not a native speaker of English, but I can write in English and I can think in English after some experience. But still, you know, it takes time. It takes time. Starting from, you know, the literature review which I had to do for the purpose of this proposal, you have to account for the state of the art on the subject which you want to study. So most of this literature I had to read myself for the first time. Some of this research literature I have already known, but only some. And then to draft my proposal, and then to fine-tune it, and also the training aspect, the CV. Every one of us has got a CV of some sort, right? For this proposal, you need to have a CV of a certain kind, and they will guide you very precisely. So what you will have to start is to read the applicant's guide twice, right? In your free time. Yeah? When you can concentrate, when you can annotate it, right? And then you will see whether you will manage. I think you will. Okay. So this is the time aspect. And then another thing which I like about the Marie Curie grants is how fast you get the reply. Right? In the Polish system, we've got a granting institution, a public granting institution, grant-giving institution, which is called the Polish Science Foundation, Narodowe Centrum Nauki. They take more than almost 9 months. They are horrible. I'm co-responsible for that because they hire me to write reviews, and they tell me I can take up to whatever weeks. I always do it in the last week.
That's okay if you keep
yeah. Well, see, if they said 3 weeks, I would have done it in the last week, which would be week 30, right? Not week whatever. The EU gives 2 months for the reviewers to reply. Let me check my notes because I put an exact note how it was. Well, in my case, it was the deadline was in mid August. So when I did it, I had 2 weeks of holiday because we restart in early September. Not the teaching, but other things, right? And then I got the news of the ranking of my application in the first days of December. No, in the last days of November. And then the news of the awarding of the grant came in the first days of December. Now it's been moved because the deadline is mid-September, and they say the official information will be available in February the following year. But it is very fast. I don't know about your national grant-giving institutions. This is very fast. And it's announced every year, and it's been announced for many years now. These rules will apply to all applications in Horizon 2020. So until 2020, the application rules would be like this year. So if you read the application rules this evening, and if you realize that's a little premature for me to apply this year, or I'm not eligible because I'm not 4-year or have not got the PhD yet, you can think of it for the next year or the following year, until 2020, because it's going to be there, right? In this way, that's one other good thing about the EU, the 7-year financial planning frameworks which they have are very good. Okay. Anything else should I say? Let me check. Double check. Oh yeah. When writing your application, focus on the content, not on the form. That's trivial for a lot of us, but this also means that the language is not the most important thing. It's not like writing for publication in a top-ranking journal where your English should be idiomatic native speakers. Right? I'm not a native speaker, and I discovered a lot of errors after I had submitted, but still that was not. That's not against the value of your proposal, if your English is not that of a native speaker. And also other formal things. You will not miss any formal requirement because the application is laid out in such a way, the template is laid out in such a way that you will be able to do it. Now, the last thing perhaps of merit, which I should say, is like in many national agencies, you apply to a panel of your discipline, right? In this European and global grants, there are 8 panels, and for all of us, the humanities and social sciences is the panel, one of the 8. Now, you may ask me, how does this relate to the number of applications and to the other fields? In my Polish context, for example, this grant-giving institution assigns a certain amount of money to various panels before applications arrive. It's not the case in this Marie Curie. It's proportionally to the number of applications. Right? So we are not underprivileged vis-à-vis the natural scientists. That's what I want to say. Because usually the grant-giving institutions, including Horizon 2020 collaborative projects, they allocate a lot of money to natural scientists and very little money to the humanities and social sciences, which is partly understandable because it costs money to have the expensive apparatus and the components for experimentation in natural sciences. But then, you know, we feel underprivileged. In this case, we aren't. Right? We are equal. We might even be more equal if there are more of us to apply. Right?
So if we will apply, if we will just apply, there will be more positions for other people.
Should pay.
All of us will apply.
Yeah.
Then other people will.
Yeah. The EU is planning to spend, well, to fund 65,000 positions of this kind until 2020, right? It's almost 10,000 a year, almost 10,000 a year, right? It's 7 years, so it's a lot. But still, it's a global competition for the European grants because anyone can apply from any country. And I met a Bangladeshi scholar doing biochemistry or something in Lund. So there are also people from very remote countries. Yeah.
I had a question regarding the different. I'm not sure if you're the right person to ask, but when you mentioned at the beginning different criteria for the different kinds of Marie Curie scholarships, is it a matter of citizenship or affiliation?
This you and I will have to double check. What I understand is you have to, I don't have this problem, right, being an EU citizen. But I understand you have to be either a citizen of the EU or an associated country, or you have to be a long-time resident, and that applies only to the global grants. The European grants, you can be of any nationality. This is what they say. Any nationality can apply for the for the grants to come to the EU, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so you can be of any nationality. Yeah?
Do you have to be affiliated when you
No.
apply?
No. No. That's one of the, because, yeah, that means, do you have to be an employee of an institution? No. you don't need. Yep.
Why do you think you got the grant?
Next question, please.
I was lucky. Well,
I was good.
yeah. Well, the proposal was good enough. I think I got some 97 out of 100 points, which, yeah, in the end, yeah. Let me get my tablet. That's actually the only slide I wanted to show to you, because PowerPoint kills presentations, of course, right? That's why I'm not a PowerPoint candidate. But let me refer to a table which they put up on page 26 of the applicant's guide, right? Where they say what they evaluate. They evaluate separately 3 aspects of your proposal: excellence, impact, and implementation. Right? For excellence, you may get you get 50% of the overall score. For it weights 50% of your final score. Impact weights 30%, and implementation weights 20%. Now, when it comes to excellence, the first item in this column is quality, innovative aspects, and credibility of the research. And that's what I was saying when I was stressing the novelty of your idea. You have to have an idea, right? And this is what, of course, other things matter too, right? But if you have a very good idea which you would like to implement, research-wise, then you will get this grant eventually. And I think I had a good idea. Well, good enough to get this grant. Then, and they also, in this excellence, they also evaluate clarity and quality of transfer of knowledge, which is your development, the objectives which you set up for yourself, which shouldn't be too many, by the way. One of the criticisms which I received, because you get reviews, right, was that I wanted to achieve too many objectives, to reach too many objectives, and that's too short a time, 12 months. Personally, I didn't have the time to apply for 2 years. Yeah, for various reasons, we all had to be back after that year. And that was the only reason why I did not apply for 24 months. And that was a reasonable criticism, right? But mind it when you will put together your application. Anyway, they would remind you of this. They would stress that you should not put too many objectives into your research proposal or your training aspect and stuff like that. But they have to be solid. Then quality of supervision, right? That's why I was saying you have to apply to a proper person. This doesn't have to be a Nobel Prize winner, right? My supervisor, Barbara Torpis-Pleva, is a recognizable person in memory studies, right? But, you know, recognizable enough, right? Then capacity of the researcher to reach or reinforce a position of professional maturity, that's what I would say, right? Yeah, and they have some hints of what that means. Yeah, then there are other things which they evaluate under impact and under implementation, which I will not discuss now. You will read it for yourselves. There is a very important note here at the end of this table. There is a threshold. The threshold is 70%. I went to a conference on the Marie Curie grants. Marie Curie scholars were invited, and there was a woman from the research executive agency, from this agency of the European Union, which is responsible for managing these things. And she remembers the first competitions for the Marie Curie grant. She said it was enough to have 70% to get a grant. And now there is a threshold of 70%. But you have to have much more than 70% to get a grant. Okay. Any question? Other questions? Yeah.
Well, what is the main difference would be comparing this project on Maria Skłodowska-Curie and EUREAS that is every year advertised. EUREAS is for 10 months, and they also ask for your plan for academic production, and it cannot be too big, it has to be realistic. And what is realistic for Maria Curie project plan? Is it 5 publications or 2 book chapters? What is reasonable, and how do they look at this?
Yeah, well, EUREAS, many of us know of this, is a network of institutions which grant fellowships to people from various countries, and it's part EU funded, actually largely EU funded. That's one of the existing networks you can apply for, right? And there are other networks of this kind. Some of them get money from the Marie Curie. There's another line of Marie Curie to finance this sort of network things, where a few institutions get together because they want to attract experienced scholars, which means all of us, right? For various research projects in various disciplines. So these are the existing networks where you can fit, right? And Marie Curie is something where you can invent yourself, right? Where you can actually apply with your own idea. And you choose where you want to go regardless of the menu. Now, what is realistic? I think it's the same. Whatever is realistic to achieve within 12 or through 24 months. Yeah. In my case, it was too much I wanted to achieve, but still they granted me the fellowship. But I didn't say I want to write 5 articles. Lithuania is becoming as crazy about articles as Poland is. So I know what you mean. In most good universities, that would be for the top performers, 5 articles a year. An article. I always advise to my PhD students who apply for the Preludium grants. We've got names of grants in the musical terms, right? Preludium is for those who want to get a PhD. Do not ever write that you would have an article published, right? Because that doesn't depend 100% on you, right? Write that you would submit an article or 2, right? So maybe an article or 2 would be a realistic goal. In the humanities, we often write books, right? So if you have worked on a monograph, then you may say that you would like to complete it. Remember, this is a very ideal time because you are funded at a very decent level. I was living in Sweden with my family, which is my wife, our daughter, and the dog, right? And in Lund, you do not just look for the most affordable accommodation. You just get what is on the market, because the market is so shallow. And in the end, we had to rent a pretty large house, which was quite expensive to rent. But still, we could afford it with this grant, right? So what I'm saying is you will not be troubled by any material concerns, unless you would like to buy yourself a Volvo car while in Sweden, right? Because then the Marie Curie grant would not be enough. But in many countries, like Poland, being a scholar is a very difficult exercise financially, right? You either have to live on a subsistence level, or you have to get some extra job. And if you get an extra job, then you cannot perform your academic tasks, right? And here in Marie Curie, you will be able to do it for a year or 2, right? Without any material concerns. So you may easily complete a book. Some people are as good as to write a book within a year, right? I'm not as good as them. a colleague of mine is, right? So a book for this colleague, if he has got a record of books, right, then they would justify this goal, the panel. The proposal is reviewed by 3 experts, which are called upon the research executive agency, from a pool which